Hello everyone, back again with movie and tune recap. Today, I'm going to explain an American slasher horror film from 2025, titled Bone Face. Spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. The movie begins at Camp Marigold, where we meet Carrier, a staff member on her way to the admin cabin after receiving a call from the unit leader. While walking, she hears strange noises coming from the bushes, but finds no one, which makes her uneasy. When she arrives at the cabin, the unit leader, Tim, tells her to check the campground because there has been a report of a dead body. Carrier complains that she is exhausted from working all day and asks why he didn't assign the other staff members to investigate, but Tim explains that they are unavailable. Tim and Carrier then head to the campground to look for the body, but they find no sign of it. Tim suggests that the body might be at the pool house, so they go there, but again they find nothing. Feeling suspicious, Carrier decides to leave, but Tim grabs her hand and drags her into the staff room. However, it turns out that this was all a surprise party planned by the rest of the staff to celebrate Carrier's last day at the summer camp. Carrier is delighted by the surprise, and the party begins with everyone drinking and celebrating. As the night goes on, the staff start getting ready for bed. While they relax, Tim brings up an old campfire story about Bone Face, a masked psychopath who supposedly goes around killing campers. However, Carrier just laughs it off, dismissing it as nothing more than a spooky camp legend. In the middle of the night, as the group sleeps, an unknown figure silently enters the room. Without warning, the intruder brutally attacks one of the staff members, then moves on to slaughter the rest. Carrier manages to escape and hides in a nearby bush, trying to stay silent. However, the killer catches up to her and attacks her from behind. As she lies injured, she looks up in terror as the masked figure is revealed to be Bone Face, who finishes her off. Moments later, Sheriff Vince Cronin and Deputy Joe McCulley arrive at the camp, responding to a frantic call from Margie, the camp manager. She had come to check on the staff, only to stumble upon a nightmarish scene of blood and carnage. Believing the killer might still be nearby, Sheriff Vince calls for backup before he and Deputy Joe head into the woods to investigate. As they search, they come across a bloody fingerprint on a tree and decide to follow the trail. Their search leads them to a local diner, where several vehicles are parked outside. Vince and Joe carefully inspect each vehicle but find nothing suspicious, and they step inside the diner, where they find a group of people enjoying their meals. Vince approaches Wes, the cook, and Jenny, one of the staff members, asking if they've noticed anyone unusual entering the diner recently. However, both Wes and Jenny insist they haven't seen anything out of the ordinary. When Wes asks what's going on, Sheriff Vince reveals that something brutal happened at Camp Marigold an hour ago, and then, he begins questioning each of the customers. First, he approaches an elderly man, Paul, and his daughter, Katie, asking if they are from the area, and Paul explains that they are just passing through. Next, Vince questions Audrey, a freelance photographer, who claims she came to the forest to take nature shots for a magazine. The officers continue their investigation and interrogate the rest of the diners, including Ray, a college student traveling alone, Meredith, a construction worker and former veteran, Nadine, a single mother, and Tobin and Riggs, two arrogant motorcyclists who become uncomfortable when the cops walk in. As Vince and Joe scroll through Audrey's camera, they suddenly come across an image of Bone Face, prompting Vince to rush off to investigate. While Vince is gone, Joe carefully examines everyone's ID cards, looking for anything suspicious. Shortly after, Vince returns, holding a black bag he found in a trash bin outside. He opens it in front of everyone, revealing Bone Face belongings, including the mask and a blood-stained hatchet, and Vince's suspicion grows: the killer is inside the diner. It is revealed that Bone Face has killed a total of 41 campers across multiple locations, 13 at Camp Twin Pines, 19 at Camp Sunny Ridge, and 9 at Camp Marigold. Realizing the severity of the situation, Vince places everyone in the diner under lockdown, declaring that no one will leave until the state police arrive, whom he has already called. To maintain order, he sets strict rules that everyone must follow, and the cops begin searching the group for anything suspicious. During the search, they find an EpiPen on Ray, who explains that he carries it in case of an allergic reaction to strawberries. After thoroughly searching everyone, Vince and Joe find nothing suspicious on any of the customers. Meanwhile, Tobin and Riggs secretly discuss a plan to escape from the diner, clearly uncomfortable with being trapped inside. During the next round of searches, Vince and Joe decide to check everyone's shoe size since Boneface was seen wearing size 9.5. One by one, the customers comply, until it's Riggs' turn, who becomes defensive and aggressive, refusing to hand over his shoes. He mocks Vince and hurls insults, trying to provoke him, and just then, Vince pins Riggs against the table, warning him to cooperate or face the consequences. After a tense moment, Riggs reluctantly hands over his shoes for inspection. Once the search is complete and no clear suspect is found, Ray secretly writes something in his notebook and discreetly shows it to Vince. Without raising suspicion, the two step outside under the pretense of getting some fresh air. Moments later, Sheriff Vince rushes back into the diner carrying Ray, who is foaming at the mouth. His EpiPen is missing, and despite their efforts, he dies from suffocation. Upon investigating, Vince and Joe check Ray's drink and discover that it had been laced with strawberry jam, which he was allergic to. They realize that Ray must have figured out the killer's identity and had gone outside to tell Vince before his symptoms started. Vince reveals that Boneface knew Ray had discovered the truth and poisoned his drink to silence him. Since Jenny has been serving food all night, the group immediately suspects her, leading to a heated argument. However, Vince steps in and shuts it down, reminding them that anyone in the diner had access to strawberry jam and could have poisoned Ray. After placing Ray's body in the bathroom, Vince and Joe decide to question everyone again, warning them to stick to the truth and not to lie. As the questioning continues, Meredith, who is a former war veteran, opens up about his past. He admits to committing violent acts during the war but insists he was only following orders. He also reveals that he was discharged due to mental health issues, which still haunt him. At this point, Katie suddenly speaks up, saying she recognizes Meredith. She recalls that he used to work at Camp Marigold as a carpenter. During his time there, one of the counselors accused him of assaulting her, leading to his dismissal. Meredith immediately denies the accusation, claiming that the girl had made advances toward him, but he rejected her. He insists that the allegation was false, but because of it, he was punished and forced to leave the camp. Even though Meredith is clearly frustrated by the accusations, he firmly states that just because of his past, it doesn't mean he is Boneface. He insists that he would never go around killing campers and refuses to be blamed for something he didn't do. As more secrets unravel, it is revealed that Nadine was once acquitted of killing her husband, and strangely, every other man she became involved with died under mysterious circumstances. However, Nadine strongly denies being the killer, saying that while her past is troubled, she has no connection to Boneface. Tobin and Riggs suddenly turn their focus on Paul and Katie, throwing accusations at them. An argument breaks out, and Tobin and Riggs launch a surprise attack on Vince and Joe, attempting to overpower them. However, the two cops regain control and subdue the motorcyclists before handcuffing Tobin and Riggs to a chair, ensuring they can't cause more trouble. Moments later, Vince receives a call from one of his colleagues, who has completed the background checks he requested, and somehow, they finally know who the killer is. Vince pulls out his gun and slowly turns toward Wes, who is Boneface. It turns out that Wes had been married for 20 years but is now divorced. He also has a daughter named Amanda Hill, a name that Katie immediately recognizes. It is revealed that Amanda Hill is the same counselor from Camp Marigold who had accused Meredith of assaulting her. Wes later discovered a video of his daughter being assaulted, which filled him with rage. He immediately went to Camp Marigold to hunt down Meredith, but by the time he arrived, Meredith was long gone. At this point, Vince pieces everything together, realizing that Wes devised a twisted plan. Since he couldn't find Meredith, he created the persona of Boneface and began killing campers across different camps, believing that eventually, Meredith would return, so he could finally kill him too. Vince also reveals that from the moment he and Joe entered the diner, he had noticed strange behavior from Wes. He was sweating profusely and wiping his bloody hands with a towel, and when questioned about it, he claimed the blood was from meat drippings. As the situation grows tense, Wes suddenly pulls out a knife, ready to attack Meredith. However, Meredith draws a gun and aims it directly at him. Suddenly, Wes lunges at Meredith but gets shot. Vince also fires at Meredith, and both of them die. With the situation now under control, the remaining customers are allowed to leave, and the bodies of Wes and Meredith are taken away. Since Jenny usually takes the bus to work, Vince and Joe offer to drive her home. While Vince waits in the car, Jenny, who is with Joe, asks to use the restroom. After some time, Joe realizes that Jenny has been gone too long and goes to check on her, only to find that she is nowhere to be found. Suddenly, Joe hears a police car horn blaring and rushes outside, only to find Vince slumped over with his throat slashed, and eventually, the sheriff dies. Realizing that Jenny is the real killer, Joe grabs her gun and runs into the forest, calling out for Jenny to come out and explain why she became a murderer. Jenny emerges from her hiding place, holding a hatchet, and finally reveals the truth. It all started at Camp Twin Pines, where she and her younger brother, Steve, were campers. Steve was constantly bullied by the other campers, and when Jenny reported it to the counselors, they did nothing. In fact, they joined in the torment. One day, the bullies took Steve into the woods, brutally attacked him, and tied him to a tree, leaving him there to die alone. However, the counselors did nothing and covered up the story as an accident. Fueled by rage and grief, Jenny carved the bone face mask and began her killing spree, first attacking the campers at Camp Twin Pines before moving on to Camp Sunny Ridge. Later, after getting a job at the diner, she discovered Camp Marigold, which reignited her thirst for vengeance and led her to target and kill the staff there. Jenny was the one who poisoned Ray by putting strawberry jam in his drink and hiding his EpiPen, because he had figured out her secret. She also framed Wes, making him look like the killer, and murdered Vince. With the truth finally exposed, Jenny puts on the bone face mask and attacks Deputy Joe, leading to a fierce struggle. The two fight violently, but Joe eventually overpowers Jenny and shoots her, killing her. Afterward, Joe removes the mask from Jenny's face and quietly says she is sorry. In the final scene, a group of campers sits around a campfire, sharing scary stories, and one of them decides to tell the others the legend of Bone Face, and the movie concludes. Okay guys, that's all the recap about Bone Face from 2025. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next video.